Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast, a production of neonewstoday.com. I'm your host, Dylan Grabowski. In today's episode, we sat down and spoke with Max Hillebrand, the CEO of zkSNACKs. zkSNACKs is a development team dedicated to building and implementing privacy solutions into the Bitcoin ecosystem. In this episode, we spoke about how an interest in sound economic models led Max to Bitcoin, privacy and scaling concerns and solutions for Bitcoin, the cypherpunk ethos, and the value of open source software, freedom of information, the privacy solutions zkSNACKs and Wasabi Wallet provided for Bitcoin, and so much more. Just a reminder, nothing said in this podcast is a solicitation to buy or sell any tokens, and that nothing should be taken as financial advice. The host or guests may hold tokens discussed in any given episode, and you can check out a disclaimer on the Neo News Today website. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and comment on your favorite podcasting platforms. Every like, comment, and share really helps us get the podcast in front of more ears and eyes. So I really enjoyed chatting with Max, and I hope you enjoy the conversation too. Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast. Today I'm really psyched. We're joined by Max Hillebrand, the CEO of zkSNACKs, a development team that's dedicated to building and implementing privacy solutions into the broader Bitcoin ecosystem. Max, I'm really excited to have you on. How are you doing today?
Oh, very well, Dylan. Thanks for the invite. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I think we've done almost 70 episodes of the podcast, and I think you might be kind of like one of the first like true Bitcoin only focused kind of OG-ish type folks. So I'm really excited to just kind of like delve into your philosophy, like cypherpunk movements, the importance of Bitcoin, like Austrian economics and all of this. So kind of to get the conversation started, I'm just really curious to hear from your perspective and maybe from some folks who are listening who might not have had this flavor of like why you're dedicated to building in the blockchain and crypto space. Given the concerns of central banks just overprinting copious amounts of fiat currencies, why is it that Bitcoin is a superior and sound money for the 21st century and beyond?
I think we have tremendous problems right now as a humanity, and on numerous fronts. You know, we don't have to go through the list, but it's obviously quite big. And I think there's a common root cause factor to a large amount of problems that we're currently facing. And fundamentally, I would argue it's all about theft, right? As soon as humans start stealing from each other, it just goes down the hill. And there's numerous ways that we could steal from each other, and one that is most obfuscated and hidden, but most vicious, is via money printing. Right. So when we increase the money supply, then we start a chain of value transfer, right, where we move money away from the people who receive this newly created money later, and to those people who receive the newly created money first. Right. Obviously, if you print money, you get rich. Right? But you don't get rich because you work productively and solve problems of others. You get rich because you took it from others. And that's just not cool, right? And it's obviously not cool. But the consequences of this down the line are way worse than you would imagine. You know, it's not just that the value of the money goes down, or in other words, the prices of everything else goes up. But it's much more than that. Is we start messing with the price structure of the world itself. Right? Prices are extremely important in today's or in any economy, and prices are emergent. Right? We only know what the price is because two people in the past agreed on the trade of something. I will give you the steak for 3 eggs or whatever it is, and this trade established a price, a relation of the value of different goods and services. And this is incredibly, incredibly important because this is literally the only way that we can find out what's the worth of something, right? How much more valuable is this one thing compared to the other thing? That's extremely difficult to do because value is subjective. And I don't know how much more you prefer your steak over bananas. But on the other hand, if we do have a price relation, right, after free trade, then we actually can compare the price and the value and worth of things, which now means we can start making smart decisions of how to allocate our resources. Which of our resources should solve which specific problem? Right? Should I build this house out of wood, of concrete, out of stones? out of glass. Right? These are all possible options of how I could build a house. And ultimately, we have to choose one. And if that choice is going to be accurate and useful and wise in the long run, depends in large parts on the monetary system and how it is being controlled. And so we can have monetary systems where a priest class of people can simply issue on command new units of the money and use it in their trade, thus starting this chain reaction of distorting the economy. Or we can have a monetary system that does not have certain privileged positions, where simply everyone has an equal position. And this is the set rules of the monetary system and nobody can change it. It's like gold. The number of atoms, a number of protons in the atom that define gold is very clear and nobody's going to change that. And that means it's a neutral money system where we simply cannot increase or change the money supply. And so Bitcoin is, for the first time, a digital money, a money in cyberspace, where we finally have a thing that we can pass around and trade with people so that we emerge a price in cyberspace for goods and services. And finally, this price can be transferred instantly over the internet. And this enables an entirely new class of ways that we can allocate our resources and solve incredibly complex problems.
So I think over the history of humanity, the average lifespan for a fiat currency is something like 27 years. And if you go back to the advent of just monies in general, thinking about the Roman Empire, gold was kind of the go-to, gold and silver, because it was this hard money that had a finite supply and, as you mentioned earlier, had these very specific characteristics. And then over time, the money would kind of start to become degraded and debased as people learned they could melt down the gold and put copper into it and really just decrease the kind of value that the gold had by bastardizing it basically with copper and other metals. And then, society collapses after the money's debased. And then we come back to gold again. And this is the cycle for empires as they kind of grow and bust. They go through this hard money solution, then they go into a fiat solution. The fiat currency debases and falls apart. And then they go back to a gold standard. And this is kind of played out over so many civilizations over millennia, to the point where if you look on a 300 to 500 year time frame, it's almost cyclical. So as we move forward in the 21st century and we have the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network, what is it that gives you kind of conviction that Bitcoin is the crypto digital hard money that will be able to survive the fall and rise of empires moving forward?
And that's a really bold claim. And it does sound ludicrous, right? Because Bitcoin is man-made after all, right? And how could men come up with something that's incorruptible by men who has created it, so to say? So it's a very tough sell to really believe that Bitcoin will stick around for eternity. On the other hand, though, why not? It could continue functioning the way that it currently functions. Blocks have been produced in the last 15 years nonstop, right on schedule. There hasn't been an invalid block. The money supply hasn't been increased. Individual coins haven't been stolen, right? Every transaction had a valid signature. So seemingly, this protocol works flawlessly at the moment. Now, there are, however, obvious limitations to the protocol itself. Right? Throughput is one obvious issue. We basically have a database that we allow anyone to write data to, right? That, and right, the database is only useful if everyone else verifies and reads through the entire database. And that's absolutely ridiculous. And so first of all, we need to somehow rate limit how we keep adding new blocks, right? Because if anyone can write however much they want, well, our database is going to be petabytes instantly. So this is where the genius of proof of work comes in, right? You can only write a valid block if the hash of it is below a certain numerical value. And this is a way that we have, without identity, without authority, a way to rate limit access rights to this database, which is quite an absolute genius invention. But nevertheless, there's then just proof of work is not enough, right? Because someone needs to verify the proof of work, and that's another key part of Bitcoin. That the sovereign use of Bitcoin is via a full node. so that your own software verifies from the very beginning to the current moment every single transaction or every single block that has ever happened. And this is, of course, a very computationally expensive process and also bandwidth expensive process. And this, so this clearly doesn't sound like it's going to scale. And it clearly has a privacy problem if everyone needs to verify everyone else's transactions. And these were the two first criticisms to Bitcoin instantly, right, as the white paper was published. And it's still a very, very valid criticism. It's quite unsure if Bitcoin can, in fact, scale to a substantial amount of people. And nevertheless, the beautiful thing is that it is an engineering system, and we can engineer with it and on top of it. So we've seen numerous improvements to the Bitcoin protocol itself, right? Even a change to its signature algorithm, right? Which is, I mean, a substantial change. And there might, even more further substantial changes coming in the future to address technological issues and increase the throughput, right? Or we can build second and third layers on top of a base layer to exponentially, potentially, increase transaction throughput. But this answers the technological, improvement trajectory of Bitcoin. But then wait a second, if we can so easily change the protocol and make it better, then couldn't we just make it better by doubling the money supply as well, right? Because apparently it's possible to change the rules. So that's here again, where I guess this is almost like a social experiment. Because if people would truly like to increase the money supply, it's like one line of code. It's very, very trivial to change it. Now, sure, the deployment of it might be a bit tricky, and there's a lot of nuances in these peer-to-peer systems, but ultimately it's just code, and it's free and open source, and you can change it to whatever you want. So because Bitcoin is a consensual system where people need to literally agree to the software that they run on their computer, then this means that they can change it. Just nobody can force them to change it, so to say. And you choose which code to run on your machine, and depending which choice you make, you will create a different monetary system in your cyberspace. And so the set of Bitcoin rules are rather small and obvious and can be implemented and run on your machine. But you might also, for example, choose the set of rules for Ethereum or any of the other chains. Right? So that means that we have a pure anarchy in money, right? Not just can you have the ultimate choice of which money do you want to use, even more, you can create your own money, right? Easily with just a couple lines of code. And that is a completely new competitive market for the creation of monetary goods in cyberspace that Bitcoin has started. And that's what makes me optimistic in the long run. Not that Bitcoin itself might be the ultimate solution, but that through this competition that Bitcoin has started, numerous entrepreneurs will sooner or later come up with a solution that is ever more perfect.
You hit on so many interesting topics there. Privacy and scaling for Bitcoin, the fact that this digital money for cyberspace is simply just code and social consensus, and that it's really opened the door for conversation about what a hard digital money might be, and that today, Bitcoin might be the best solution, but this might not be the best solution as time moves on. And I really can't wait to dig into all of these different facets. But I do want to just kind of take a step back and walk our listeners through how you got to this point, how you became the CEO of zkSNACKs, and how you came to this philosophy and this ideology. So maybe we could just kind of start in your earlier formative years before you started delving into Bitcoin. How did your educational path lead you to studying economies and Austrian economics?
My mother, thankfully, urged me early on in life to be productive and to get small little jobs, handing out newspapers, washing dishes in the restaurants, these types of things. And I'm forever grateful for her, because that really taught me the value and the pleasure of being productive and helping others. And it also kickstarted my curiosity on why do we work? Why do we build stuff and how can we make it better, etc. These questions just always I thought very curious. And then I thought that I might find some solution in books and theory. And looked at the first economics books that I could find, and they were all Keynesian macroeconomic. And I was very confused, because either I'm too stupid and I just don't get it, or it was very, very, very wrong. And then I kept looking for alternatives, and sooner or later stumbled upon Austrian economics and Ludwig von Mises, Hans Hermann Hoppe and especially Murray Rothbard, who just have such a incredibly clear and well formulated and obviously correct way of looking at the consequences of human behavior. And what we can deduce on what the economy is and why it functions the way it does, and what are interest rate, what is money, right? All of these extremely interesting questions are just so clear cut, obviously explained with Austrian economics. It's almost laughable of how obvious and easy it is once you actually start to think in this way. It's a paradigm shift. The previous schools of economic thought are trying so hard to impress you with fancy words and math and graph, and it just doesn't work. But then you just take one little axiom. Humans act like a very innocent sounding starting statement, and all of a sudden with that mind shift and that way of analyzing the world of economics from the individual, all of a sudden everything makes sense. And this paradigm shift really impressed me so much that I thought, well, I'll keep looking into these things. And then only later that I discovered technology and software and the cypherpunk ethos. So that was definitely my second love, but my first is clearly praxeology.
So do you remember kind of the first time you came across Bitcoin? And since you kind of took it upon yourself to delve into these studies of economics, and you yourself kind of debunked MMT, and you kind of developed your own philosophy as to why Austrian economics was the most sound. When you came across Bitcoin, were you like me and so many others I've had on this podcast, where you looked at it and you just kind of looked past it and then came back another time and had like a second aha or a genesis moment? Or did Bitcoin kind of click for you? And kind of when did you first stumble on Bitcoin?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the very commonly heard trope. Of the first time I heard it, I was like, meh, this doesn't sound that interesting. Just probably some fake money online. It's not even real, right? It's not physical. I already back then was involved with Austrian economics, and I understood that information is not scarce. Right. And so we cannot have a digital money because money must be scarce, right? If it's a double spending issue, right? If I give you the money and I can give it to someone else, then that's not money, right? That's like a thought, but not money. And so I dismissed Bitcoin early on. And what really changed in between the second time of encountering it was a friend helping me to install Ubuntu, my first Linux operating system, and really explaining me what free and open source software really means. And by that time, I read Against Intellectual Property by Stefan Kinsella, a beautiful economics book about the absolute nonsense that is intellectual property or the claim of ownership of ideas. It's a ludicrous and very, very harmful and dangerous mentality. And so I then it made me click that free software is a foundationally correct and ethically, morally righteous method of shipping and delivering code. And the closed source proprietary software is like theft. It's not good. It's modern forms of slavery. So I'm realizing that free software is paramount. And then encountering Bitcoin again and realizing that this is a free software monetary system. Then it starts to click for me and blow my mind. And it's where then I delved much deeper into the philosophy of technology and cypherpunks specifically.
Yeah, I think for me and many others who were a part of our generation, my first kind of aha moment with free and open source software was Napster. And while I'm not advocating for taking money out of the pockets of artists who create content that we love to consume, that takes time and energy, and they should be rewarded for that, there was a moment of freedom when I was able to download my first Eminem album that my parents didn't want me to listen to because of curse words. But the power that I felt and the empowerment that I felt after I was able to do so, which was enabled by torrents and open source software, was really a moment that forever kind of changed my trajectory in how I view the way that people should be able to access information and just all sorts of data on the internet. So if we fast forward to kind of today's day and age, I think we're starting to see a sort of attack on this. We can say that Metallica attacked this open access to music files when they sued Napster. And in the crypto space, we can say that we really started to see this attack on privacy preserving technology in mid to late 2022, when the US Department of Justice went after Tornado Cash, which is a mixing service on Ethereum that allows the obfuscation of people's Ethereum to kind of hide the trail of the wallets that connected that asset. So now that Tornado Cash is on the sanctions list, and we've seen some other kind of like negative actions taken towards the Bitcoin ecosystem, particularly with the founders of Samurai Wallet being arrested, and some of the issues we'll go into with Wasabi Wallet and CoinJoin being shut down. At a high level, from your perspective, where are we right now in the first they laugh at you, or first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win phase? When we're looking at governments and the threat that they have on privacy preserving technology, where are we right now in the grand scheme of the fight towards being able to transact freely online and privately? How much of a threat are governments right now towards us and Bitcoin users?
Well, I mean, governments have since for a long time been the greatest threat to humanity by a long shot. Right? I mean, look at the number of hundreds of millions of people killed by government in the last century. And that's, well, an unfortunate reality that we have to deal with. We live in a dangerous world. There are, well, psychopaths and crazy criminals out there. And, well, we have to adapt. This is what censorship means, right? Any authoritarian regime starts by censoring first speech and trade and ultimately payments itself. So this is nothing new, though, right? This is not a new conflict recently started. This is an ancient, millennial-old battle of good versus evil, and that means that it's very expected. Right? Obviously, when you take away the power of the king's not happy. He would like to keep his slaves, and that is that's the reality. But that's where cypherpunks come in. Like, they're punks, like actually punks, because they say no to authority and no to tyranny. This is something that is part of the ethos of the internet, right? It was a network to route around censorship, to route around people who try to stop you from spreading your information, from burning the books that you would like to publish. And this, got escalated in the 1990s with the crypto wars, where cryptography, like math formulas, were classified as ammunitions, right? If you sent this book across seas, then straight to Gulag, right? Those were the realities, right? What Phil Zimmermann did was officially illegal, right? The authorities said, you shall not use strong encryption, like, full stop. And these are the types of courageous actions that need to be taken in the face of tyranny. And thank God that the early cypherpunks did so, because, the internet would not exist without this use of strong cryptography and that we enjoy so much right now, and of course neither with cryptocurrencies, right, and Bitcoin. So this is where cypherpunks write code comes in. We still have a inkling of freedom left, so that we can choose which code to write and where to publish it, and so free and unashamed people will continue to write the code that the tyrants would prefer them not to publish.
So you bring up an interesting point with the cypherpunks, and there's a long and storied history with mathematics and cryptography that goes well beyond the advent of the internet. I mean, if you look at kind of like this really cool tree of how the Bitcoin paper came to be, and that it's really an aggregation of 40 or plus different academic publications that date back to the 60s, maybe even before. You can really see that there's a rich history in the cypherpunk movement. But today in 2024, we have stars launching meme coins. We have L2s launching on top of L1s and L3s launching on top of L2s. It can be very difficult for somebody who's new to this space to really find signal through the noise, because so much out there is really just trying to scam people out of their time, attention, and money. And so you can get lost in this kind of flash of, quote unquote, getting rich overnight. And really, like, the ethos of blockchain and cryptocurrency came from the cypherpunk movement. So I'm curious to hear your perspective. In 2024, so many people that I've had on the pod don't necessarily talk about a cypherpunk ethos. So is that kind of ideology and movement of cypherpunks still alive today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's live and kicking. It's been better than ever before. Right? Like 30 years ago, there were like, what, 3, 4 cypherpunks? It wasn't really much. And they were like just, occasionally writing mails to each other, not really actively doing much. There were a couple of heroes, Nick Szabo, Helfini, that really did exceptional work and substantial progress for humanity, and thank God for them. But nowadays, I would say there's probably the all-time high of cypherpunk adherence so far. And that like the fact that we see everyone and their mama now creating their own cryptocurrency is, I guess, the perfect like trope that the cypherpunks have won. That again, now it is possible to create tokens online and send them to people. Right? This was something that 30 years ago was like this wet dream of like, might this ever be possible? Like, are we gonna figure this out? Yeah, we figured it out. Right? And now we can use it, and we can build these systems of trade in cyberspace now, which simply wasn't possible before. And like the internet was cool, right? But the internet had this massive handicap of just being about information and not being about trade. Like we tried to use the internet for trades and since forever, because humans trade all the time, right? That's what we do. But just trading with only words is really, really tough because, you want to get that stake. And now with Bitcoin, we finally have a way to establish scarcity in cyberspace so that we can hand around digital tokens in a trustless fashion. And that's absolutely wonderful, right? So I think the cypherpunks would be absolutely proud with what we have created now, because we don't just have anonymous communication networks, right? And anonymous ways of publishing distributedly and censorship resistantly, but also a way of having money and making transactions and payments and multi-lock escrows and smart contracts. Like all of this amazing visionary tech from 30 years ago is now actually here and usable, more or less usable, but steadily and continuously improving. So yeah, cypherpunks are winning hard.
I remember when I've been using the internet since basically as long as I could read a chapter book. So I feel super blessed to have been able to have kind of like been part of the first wave of retail internet users. And back in the day, like using a credit card online was super sketchy, and people were terrified that it wouldn't be securely transmitted over the wires. And today we have these crypto economic models with economic models baked into the code, which is really what kind of the revolution is in terms of like the tech stack that cryptocurrencies offer. So when I go to like Bitcoin meetups here in Denver, and I tell people that my day job is creating content for an alt L1 network, they look me in my face and call me a coiner and tell me I'm scamming people. So I'm just like, I want to double down on what you were saying, that maybe, the early cypherpunks wanted to create a peer-to-peer cash that couldn't be bastardized or stopped by a nation state. But today's hardcore Bitcoiners might not even like the fact that there are such things as ICOs, initial token offerings, coins, NFTs, other sorts of distributed technology enabled solutions. And they might just say that the only one use case for cryptocurrencies is what Bitcoin is an ultrasound, immutable, peer-to-peer money. So do you think that this is kind of like a part of the beautiful solution that Bitcoin has created, the fact that we can make these meme coins and I can create my own NFT, and maybe there are going to be digital identity solutions on these distributed peer-to-peer networks? Is that like kind of a beautiful byproduct of what the cypherpunks wanted? I guess I'm just like kind of asking you to double down on what you were just saying, and maybe if there's anything else that kind of like popped up in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, when we have an easy way to create new tokens online, then as with any technology, we can use that for good or for evil, right? We can use this as, for example, an ethical way to represent shares of a company, as absolutely possible, right? Or on the other hand, we could also create a Ponzi scheme, right? And pump and dump it on Telegram groups and get really rich. And I guess especially during like 2017, like around that time, it was just absolutely insanely wild of the quantity and quality of the scams. And I mean like, literal scams, like actual Ponzi schemes running away with your money type of scam. And that's a big problem. It's kind of the Wild West. If it's very easily possible for anyone not just to create the token, but then also to broadly communicate and market about this, then it's just like radically different from anything we've seen in the past. And a lot of people who might not be as tech savvy or let's say economically savvy can easily get fooled with this. That sucks, but such is life, and I guess that's why a lot of Bitcoin maxis would recommend the focus on Bitcoin. Right? Because especially during that time, the likelihood that, something where you even made a decent amount of due diligence ended up being a scam was very, very, very high. And so the very naive and stupid, simple choice of just do Bitcoin probably saved 99% of the people who would have dabbled in shitcoin otherwise. So I very much understand this. And, further, like companies and stocks and debt products are really cool. They're really interesting, right? We can do project finance, etc. This is a very great technology, but money is just so much more foundationally important than any individual business. Plus, today's like fiat monetary system is so much broken, right? Like the fiat corporation system also, pretty bad, and the debt markets, it's a mess. But like the fiat money system is, 10x larger of a problem. And that's why, at least for me, the focus on Bitcoin is a rational one in the sense of let's fix the biggest problems first, and then once we have a sound monetary standard, we can actually build companies and debt vehicles, etc. on a much more sound footing. But this doesn't mean that like nobody should work on companies or debt structures like until I have fixed the money right here. That's ridiculous, right? So I think there's just a lot of craziness in the last couple of years in the crypto space, and a lot of toxicity that might come from the right place of let's try not to scam people and protect them from scammers. But fundamentally, I'm an anarchist in the sense of free competition is the solution to numerous problems, right? Consensual trade, and you have no right to deny someone the privilege of creating his own coin. Like that's simply not how reality is and how ethics is. I personally focus on the money problem, and to me, Bitcoin has for many reasons the most likely solution to the money problem. There's only a very few other currencies or tokens, let's call them more broadly, that would address the money problem to Bitcoin, like Monero, potentially. Like even Zcash is like, that's like probably not, right? But so there's like only probably 1.5 decent options of using as a base money for cyberspace, and Bitcoin is the vast majority of that. So that's why a focus on Bitcoin is prudent, but it's not a blanket statement that anything that is not Bitcoin must be a scam and a stealing from people. So it's just do your own research.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective a lot. And I mean, even like if you look at Ethereum, when paired against Bitcoin, it's only gone down on the ETH to BTC chart. So maybe these toxic maxis might have been right, because almost everything has gone down when compared on the BTC chart. But I think that, for somebody who's really into Bitcoin, to steal the autonomy of somebody to educate themselves and to make their own decision and just say you should only buy this asset is really stealing our opportunity to participate in one of the greatest things that exists today, which is an open and free market. So I always find that to be sort of hypocrisy in a way, but I understand that, maybe somebody who wholeheartedly believes in the nature of Bitcoin might really want to espouse that from a maximalist perspective. But now I kind of want to like zero in on the technology, because we don't always have to talk about assets and prices and if this is going to make me money or not, or what a money is. And I think something that kind of brings interest to me today is when we're talking about privacy, the best way to buy anything in the most private fashion is by using a physical piece of paper of fiat currency. If I don't want the government knowing what I'm buying, I should pay with dollar bills. And so today, if we were going to create the US dollar, I don't even think it would be legal by current politician standards to create that. So clearly, even at the fundamental level of what our currency is today, current politicians might not even like it. So when we talk about privacy, we spoke about this earlier. I really do feel like that we're in an age right now where the powers that be are fundamentally trying to attack anything that creates and builds and preserves privacy. So maybe now we can talk a little bit about the work that you do at zkSNACKs. And the ZK part of SNACKs stands for zero knowledge, which helps implement privacy solutions. So maybe we could start at a high level. Where has Bitcoin gotten it wrong with privacy? And what are some of the solutions that you and your team at zkSNACKs are trying to build to add this layer of privacy onto this layer of secure cyberspace money?
Yeah, I guess the glorious realization of zkSNACKs specifically, or Bitcoin more generally, is that the privacy problem in Bitcoin or in other words, Bitcoin does not have a fundamental privacy flaw. Bitcoin can have exceptionally great privacy or not much at all, right? And the existing protocol, almost the protocol that Satoshi released in 2009, could accommodate both use cases. And Satoshi alluded this in the white paper, right? That this is obviously a not perfectly private system, but we can improve things by, for example, creating a new public key for each time we get paid. I do not reuse your addresses. It's a very simple, implementation detail of just rotate keys. That's what chat messages do, or like all the time. So it's not that difficult, but it provides a substantial privacy. And then also in the white paper, Satoshi also mentions that there's this one assumption that when we have multiple inputs, the coins being spent in a transaction, then they're very likely to belong to the same person. Right? So like one person can add multiple of his coins to be spent at the same time in a transaction. This is the common input ownership heuristic. And that's quite a nasty one, because let's assume you got paid 3 times in the past and you always generated a new address. So at the time when you get paid, these are 3 perfectly random looking addresses. Nobody knows that they belong to the same person. And so at this point where you just got paid, nobody knows that you got paid 3 times. But then when you spend your money and you create a transaction that has, let's say, 3 inputs and 2 outputs, and you spend all of the 3 coins that you have in the past, you put 1 output to the merchant for the Lambo and 1 output for your change back. And now you've revealed quite a substantial amount. Like to everyone, you've revealed that, look, there's these 3 coins from different addresses, but they got spent at the same time in the same transaction. Seems like they all belong to the same person. And then further, you might have revealed by, for example, using a rounded amount or something like this, that this is the payment output. And so someone bought, and then here's the change. So now we've not just linked the 3 transactions of your past, but also the future transaction of where you're going to spend your change money in the future. And of course, the merchant gets a lot of information about you as well. Right? He knows you have these 3 coins. You held on to them for like 10 years. They were like really old coins, and you're spending them now. Maybe I can, and look, you have like 100 Bitcoin left over in the change. Well, that's juicy. Maybe, I'll not let you leave the building. Why not? So this is obviously a big problem, but then there's a very obvious solution to this. And it's basically that different people can own the different coins in the same transaction, right? There's no rule in Bitcoin that says the very same person must make a transaction all by himself. No. Right? The rules are there must be more inputs than outputs, right? And every input must have a signature and stuff like this. But there's no rule saying that you cannot combine, or you cannot collaborate with others to create a transaction together. And so that's basically what a CoinJoin is, right? It's a Bitcoin blockchain transaction with inputs and outputs and signatures, where we have hundreds of inputs and hundreds of outputs, and not all of them belong to the same person. And now something really, really interesting has happened, right? Because we moved from this way of like 3 inputs, 2 outputs, where it's very easy to say like all of the inputs belong to the same person, and they went to this change output, right? So that's the same person that still has it. We can see a flow from inputs to outputs, right? We can intuitively see it, right? But as soon as we increase the count of inputs and outputs, it becomes obvious that inside of the Bitcoin protocol, inside a single transaction, we have a perfectly anonymous transfer of Satoshis, right? Because it's not like the first Satoshi of the first input goes into the first Satoshi of the first output. Right? That's not how it works. That's how ordinals, for example, works, but not the Bitcoin protocol itself. Right? In the Bitcoin protocol, the Satoshis don't move from inputs to outputs, so to say, but the Satoshis are destroyed on the input side and new Satoshis are created on the output side. It's like a wormhole, right? It's not that you flow from left to right, it's you disappear and you reappear on the other side of the room. And this is a perfect, theoretically perfect anonymity set, right? There is no way that you could link the one input to an output because there is no flow, right? It's an atomic destruction and creation of a numerical value, right? It's just, the Satoshi amount is just a number. It's just like an integer, right? It doesn't even have a denomination or anything. It's just 2,703. Like that's just a number. There is no internal reference from one number to another. And that's the realization, right? That, wow, Bitcoin is a perfect anonymous system as long as we analyze a single transaction. And this transaction has sufficient number of inputs and outputs. Right? But the cool thing is nobody tells us how, like we can design our own transactions, right? As long as they're valid to Bitcoin consensus. And that's basically what Wasabi Wallet did. It's a higher, like a coordination protocol that users of a Bitcoin wallet, right? So end user wallet software can talk to each other via a central coordinator to communicate the creation of a new Bitcoin transaction with many inputs and many outputs in such a way that, it is secure and nobody can steal or spy on each other. And therefore we have a way that without trusted third parties, without handing over control of your money, simply by sending your money to yourself, right, and coordinating the creation of this new transaction, you can securely transfer Bitcoin in a much more private way.
So you said that it was like the central coordinator that kind of obfuscated the creation and the distribution of the UTXO, but this was done in a decentralized manner. So what's kind of the the dichotomy between having the coordinator, but also this service being completely decentralized?
Yeah, so there have been throughout a long time ways that to make Bitcoin more private on the end user level. And the most common way it's like known as a custodial mixer, right? So you have a service provider, he has his own private keys, and now Alice sends her money to Bob, and Charlie sends his money to Bob, and everyone sends his money to Bob. And later, it feels like it, he can give the money back to them, but he uses different coins. And so an outside observer doesn't really know what's going on here because there's like a bank, a money warehouse that is in the middle here. This is very effective, but of course it comes with the risk that this guy can run away with your money. And whenever there is such a risk asymmetry, there's a lot of legacy fiat regulation that banks as such should be regulated. And potentially that's a valid thing. But in any case, there's like people with guns coming after you if you do this. The CoinJoin coordination, however, is fundamentally different, right? Because nobody is sending money to a service provider, right? With a CoinJoin, you're 100% all the time in full control of your money, right? The money never leaves your private keys. What you do with this coordination is you simply talk to a group of people to create a new unsigned Bitcoin transaction, something that will be broadcasted to the Bitcoin blockchain at a later point in time with many inputs and many outputs and many signatures. So this is almost a coordination service is like a group messaging server, right? This is a server where we have hundreds of users wanting to sign the same message. It's almost like a petition. We want to declare this, and we're all going to put our signature underneath. And the coordinator simply just helps, to coordinate and communicate with all of these members on, okay, who wants to be on this contract that we're signing. So the coordination server is a very untrusted piece of technology. He cannot run away with your money, right? He cannot steal from you, and he cannot spy on you. So this is simply a dumb messaging relay, right? He takes encrypted payload and passes it on to someone else. And so therefore, it's not a bank. It's not a money transmitting business. It's simply a messaging relay. And so these are, of course, very easy and trivial to run and work flawlessly.
Is that basically then the main differentiation between what Wasabi was and what Samurai Wallet was that Wasabi provided this coordination service, whereas Samurai Wallet provided that custodial mixing solution?
No. In fact, Samurai, or specifically Whirlpool, is also a CoinJoin coordination model, which makes this very, very interesting case, right? Because in the past, there were numerous shutdowns and arrests of providers of these anonymous money warehouses, right? These unregistered banks, basically. arguably for obvious reasons. But this is the first time where a pure messaging relay is being attacked. Right? Where we're basically saying, no, like you're not allowed to pass these messages on to other people. Right? And which, that's kind of shocking because that's what ISPs do, yeah, it's a very interesting case of, yet another overreach of the government enforcement.
And so I think with much sadness and dismay, zkSNACKs shut down its CoinJoin services as of July 1st, 2024. So yesterday, as of recording. So RIP. Why did the team decide to disband these services? And maybe you could just share a little bit about what the concerns are for an entity that's providing these privacy enabling tools for immutable peer-to-peer digital money networks.
Yeah, indeed, it is unfortunate. And considering the current risk environment, it seems a reasonable choice. It has always been very risky to work in cutting edge industries. You can get hacked or have malicious employees, and of course, government crackdowns as a predominant risk. And this is something that, of course, has been obvious and well calculated. However, there at least was some expectation of decency and at least sticking to previously published rules. Right? Because there were, of course, numerous guidelines and such that self-custodial technologies, right, where the service provider does not have the ability to run away with the user's money, obviously not a bank, right? So that was the assumption under which the entire ecosystem, I guess, operated. And now there have been, throughout the recent years, numerous I guess, shots at these foundations, and specifically with Samurai, seemingly an obvious dismissal of jurisprudence and past guidelines, saying that no, custody is not a identifier or a marks for a money transmitter business. Right? You don't actually need to hold the money in order to transmit it, apparently. And this puts a legal uncertainty on an industry that previously was pretty clear cut. And zkSNACKs was, from the very beginning, not designed as a criminal organization. Right? We're like software developers and academic researchers and such. And then obviously, when the environment changes and a peaceful software as a service business all of a sudden is at least claimed to be illegal, which of course still has to be held up in front of court. But this just increases the risk of running such a business. Guys with black bags might come and kidnap you at any time, and not just you, but your employees, right? And this is also not just, of course, the direct kidnapping and arrest issue, but a lot of indirect pressures as well. All of the founders basically had their bank accounts shut off, right? The wives of the founders had their bank accounts shut off. And like numerous harassments and Operation Choke Point 2.0 style indirect pressure points, where, at some point the risks is simply too large for a publicly known entity in attempting to do this the legal route to do it. It just is a sad state that communication relays are under tyranny at such an advanced stage and have to fear for their lives. So yeah, it's unfortunately not as free of a world as many of us would like there to be. But thankfully, we have the technologies to, work against these evil forces.
Yeah, you mentioned that the Samurai founders' bank accounts were shut off, so were their wives. And it's not just in the U.S. that this happens. A few years ago, the protesters, the trucking protesters in Canada, they themselves had their bank accounts shut down. So it's a multi-jurisdictional kind of choke point that doesn't just exist in the U.S., but this has been proven to happen in other countries as well. So it's sad to see that Wasabi had to shut down. You mentioned earlier that zkSNACKs is kind of shuttering its doors. So as we kind of transition back out, I guess I have a two-part question, which might be semi-related or not at all. A, do you think that non-custodial wallet providers are at risk generally, not just non-custodial wallet providers that provided CoinJoin services? Are we at a point in the battle against the regulators and the people who want to control power where they're going to shut down our ability to even hold a ledger? And secondly, what's next for the zkSNACKs team?
Well, firstly, absolutely, and yes, very unfortunately, but the war against human freedom has continuously wrapped up in the last couple of years, and unfortunately, I don't see it stopping anytime soon. So I would urge anyone active in this space to be very careful. We're dealing with dangerous people here, and we need to take smart and carefully calculated decisions. So yeah, please protect yourself and become conscious of the immense terror that we are fighting here, and the extent of brutality that is willing to be went to. Just again, read a little bit up on the history of the last century and what governments have done to humanity, and morality has not improved. So the next round of genocide will be way worse. And I fear that people on the forefront of ideology and technology and philosophy, right, like freedom fighters as Bitcoiners are to be the first in the gulag. This has happened in the past. Again, the dissidents and opposition of political parties are frequently exterminated. So this is nothing new. I guess we might have underestimated of how much of a serious situation this is. But ultimately, this is what the fight is all about. So welcome to the fight for censorship resistance. And then what's next for
zkSNACKs? I mean, you guys are disbanding. Unfortunately, I don't get the sense that this is the end of your fight in this space and providing technologies to help empower the individual. I get the sense that the co-founders of zkSNACKs don't feel this way either. So where are you and your team going to focus your efforts next?
Yeah, zkSNACKs was a vagabond group of people, so to say, and we, as a company, is unfortunately definitely shutting down. And Wasabi Wallet was the main effort that was developed and the main service provided. And so it simply doesn't make sense to continue this company if the service is no longer provided. And so this definitely means some changes. zkSNACKs was, a quite benevolent supporter of free and open source software, hiring numerous developers and researchers and educators. And so this falls apart, which is of course a big shame. Having to let go of dedicated people who work on advancing human flourishing is always a sad thing. On the other hand, this was some of the most talented people I've ever got the pleasure to meeting. So I've no doubt that they won't be bored in the future years and will continue to be productive. So we will see where individuals end up, continuing to contribute. But I doubt that any of them are going to go back to the fiat minds and the fiat mindset. I think once you take these pills, there is no turning back.
Yeah, and I bet it's an unfair question to ask the CEO of a company that he's currently shutting down what's next. But do you have anything on your radar next, or are you just kind of still in the day-to-day taking care of finalizing the shutting down of zkSNACKs?
Well, the ultimate long game is still the same, right? Ending human slavery and establishing a free and prosperous society. Nothing has changed there for many years. Nuances of strategy are for sure different. And again, doing it in a risk-cautious way. If state power continues to crack down, then we need to become smart and careful in how we continue to operate. So if I will see on what the details or what will come in the future. But I haven't been bored in the space for many years. There are so many fascinating and worthwhile and important projects that are eagerly waiting for contributions of everyone. So I won't be bored, and I'm pretty sure that the audience won't either. If they want to apply themselves in this fight, there's lots of work to do.
So I think it's obvious, what the tasks and challenges are ahead of us, and who the oppressors are, and what kind of fight that's going to be brought to our doorstep. But maybe as we end the conversation, we can end on a note for hope, or maybe not. So I'll ask a two-part question, and I'll just ask you first. Is there hope for on-chain privacy in the US and I guess also globally? Like, do we have hope?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. We have the technical solution. like Wasabi specifically as the CoinJoin protocol is an absolutely beautiful solution. We might be able to fine tune it here and there, but the tech is there. And technology comes in front or before culture, right? And once technology of anonymous base money transfer exists, then people will use it, and culture will change, and politics eventually too. That's the beautiful thing of free and open source software. Like once the cat is out of the bag, it's very hard to put it back in. And that's the case for Bitcoin as a base money technology. It's the case for CoinJoin as a privacy based money tech. And that's the same for all the layer 2s and layer 3s and what's not to come. Plus, the speed and acceleration of progress has definitely improved and picked up. And nowadays we see so many radical new ways of looking at Bitcoin and using it that I'm extremely bullish. Governments and the state are in the way, but so are they always. I guess what the cypherpunk have really figured out is this asymmetry of power, right? That we simply make defense ridiculous cheap, and we make attack ridiculous expensive, and then we ship it to 1 billion people, and that's it. So I think we're on a very brilliant directory of ensuring human prosperity, and the tech is basically ready with a little bit of fine tuning and engineering on top. And we can ship it to billions. And we will so throughout the next couple of years. And I think then the world will be quite a different place.
So final question. We have Bitcoin ETFs. We have institutions adopting this onto their balance sheets. We have ordinals and runes on the network, which make for fungible tokens on Bitcoin as a commodity network. We have all these really great things that are happening with Bitcoin. So what kind of excites you the most looking forward? Is it like L2 solutions? Is it new and innovative uses of this Bitcoin technology? Is it companies and governments even finally adding this to their sheets? If you had to choose one thing, what excites you most about Bitcoin looking forward?
Oh, really difficult question, of course. On the tech side, I would say zero knowledge proofs, right? This is probably the one area that even Satoshi mentioned, like, we should pay attention to this because we can probably make it a lot better than what we do with and we're starting to see this where advanced zero knowledge systems are much more approachable, scalable, verifiable, easier to implement and such. And this already shows numerous good progress. So and there, I guess specifically BitVM is one interesting part of the Bitcoin network to basically add full Turing completeness to the script execution environment with some crazy genius trick. That really, again, just shows that we have no idea what Bitcoin is, and it will take us decades to find out what we have actually discovered here and how to use it. We have a lot to learn, that's for sure. And I think also that in quite some time, we will look back at our early days of making blockchain transactions in horror of how inefficient and reckless and not private it was. And there will at least be some time for the future like archaeologists to go into the old blocks and see what craziness was happening as we were bootstrapping this network. But yeah, lots of things technically excited to be.
Love it. And Max, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way that they can?
Yeah, towardsliberty.com. This is also where you can send me mails, notes, and sats. Max@towardsliberty.com. That's probably another thing I'm bullish on is Nostr, a new private public key pair based communications layer, let's say. And here again, Max@towardsliberty.com is where you can find my pub key. That's where I do most of my posting nowadays.
Max, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. It was super fun to delve into the fight for privacy, the fight for a fair and free money, both the pitfalls and the things to look forward to. I had a blast chatting with you.
Likewise, Dylan. Excellent questions, and keep it up with the show. See you on the next one.
Cheers. Well, what did you think of that conversation? I thought it was very interesting to delve into the cypherpunk ethos of creating tyranny-free digital systems, and how Max thought the cypherpunk ideology was more alive today than ever. It was also fascinating to learn more about Max's insights into how Bitcoin has privacy solutions inherently baked into the network, and that we just have to figure out unique ways to leverage them. And despite the fact that nation states around the world are trying to clamp down on privacy-preserving, on-chain solutions, that there's still reasons for hope in the technologies and the people that are building them. To keep up to date with the podcast, head over to www.smarteconomypodcast.com. And if you like the guests that we've had on the show, please consider showing support by liking, sharing, rating, and reviewing this episode. Every rate, review, like, share really helps us get the podcast in front of more ears and eyes. And of course, if you're a NEO token holder, please consider voting for NEO News today as your council representative. We've proudly been serving the NEO ecosystem since 2017, and will continue to do so by putting portions of our council rewards directly back into ecosystem growth initiatives. With all that said, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of the Smart Economy podcast, and we're already looking forward to catching you on the next one.